Hey, what's up everyone? Dr. Stein here at Straight Ahead Chiropractic, and I'm going to take a little bit of time. We're going to get a little bit nerdy. It's been a while since I've done one of these nerdy videos, and I really want to unpack this idea, concept, and really reality of the science behind neuroregulation. Neuroregulation just basically means this: our body's designed in a specific way to perform specific tasks at a specific time so that it can be as healthy as possible. We don't have to think about the normal processes of our heart beating, of digesting our food, of our breath and oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange. Those are all regulatory processes, and growth and development, neurodevelopment, actually happen along that same lines. But there's a few things that can interrupt that, and I want to have that conversation today. So when talking about neuroregulation, we can't not talk about the 4 T's. What are the 4 T's regarding neuroregulation? Specifically, what interferes with our body's ability to regulate itself? They are trauma, toxins, thoughts, and the most recent development, technology. Trauma, toxins, thoughts, technology. We also refer to that as physical stress, chemical stress, emotional stress, and then technological stress. Now, those 4 things lead to stress. One thing that I want to stress about stress is that it has this negative connotation to it that I think we as society have placed there, but you can't grow without stress. You can't. There's no strength without struggle. And so a lot of times we look at stress and we have this idea of like all stress is bad, all stress leads to disease. And what actually can happen is a healthy response to stress is what makes us healthy. Our ability to be healthy is really largely dependent on us being stressed. And so stress isn't going to be there in one season and gone the next season. It never goes away. Our body's ability to adapt and respond to it is what really determines our ability to be healthy or not. Now, stress loads will certainly be higher. And right now, as a society, we are seeing all of these T's, but really we're seeing technology off the charts and thoughts off the charts. And I would say these are often inseparable, right? Stress is sticky, which means it all sticks together. So if you're having a rough emotional day, you might lean toward eating some comfort food, which might be toxic to your system, right? And plop down in front of your computer or Facebook and social media and numb yourself with technology, which will not have the best posture, which will lead toward or lean to some micro trauma happening on your system. And this doesn't just happen to us adults. This happens to kids too. 2-3-year-olds that are in front of their iPads all day long, eating processed food that is really sticky, right? It's that stress. And what happens with that stress is that it stacks up. Stress is cumulative for good and bad. Put a string of runs together, right? Go running every day for the next year. And that stress of that beneficial stress of challenging your system to be stronger cardiovascularly is going to stack up to make you a healthier individual in a year. Do nothing or stay stuck in a negative stress response, and that also is going to shift you into a less than desirable health status. And one of the things that I've heard people say is to be able to grow, you have to step out of your comfort zone. And what I want to say is you actually will grow in your comfort zone, but unfortunately you'll grow weaker. You don't just stay neutral, you don't just stay stagnant. If you stay in your comfort zone, you will actually drift in the wrong direction, because on the trajectory of health, you're either moving toward health or you're moving toward disease. There's no neutral, there's no park, you don't stay stationary, you're going one direction or another. So these 4 T's, if not handled appropriately, if not dressed appropriately, or if they're just overwhelming for our system, they're sticky, they stack up, and they shift us. What do I mean by they shift us? Well, when we look at the central nervous system, which really is the brain, spinal cord, brainstem, it can be divided into, or has a division of it, called the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is this whole regulatory process. All of like our heartbeat, our breathing, our digestion, all of the auto-regulatory processes that we don't have to think about happen naturally, and that's mostly an adaptive system. And what I mean by that is it is responding to the environment. It's not necessarily driving our heart rate. Our heart rate will race or go up and our blood pressure will go up if we are introduced to a stressor. And so what happens in the autonomic nervous system, it's divided into sympathetic and parasympathetic. The sympathetic is our fight or flight or freeze mechanism. It's driven by cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine. Those are the things that you've heard of adrenaline, the adrenaline rush. That serves the purpose to motivate us to find and seek safety in an imminent threat. The opposite of that, and this is a check and balance system, the opposite of that is the parasympathetics. That's our rest, digest. That's where growth and development happen. We really can't grow and develop and be stuck in stress at the same time. If we are stuck in this stress system, which we call a sympathetic dominance, if we're stuck in that stress system, we're not really growing. We're not mentally growing. We're not physically growing. I mean, we might physically grow. We might physically grow in all the wrong ways, but we will continually move in a specific way. And we'll either go toward more stress or we'll be able to down-regulate and to be able to make sense. Oftentimes we call this the gas pedal. If you've been in our office, you've heard this analogy before. And we call the parasympathetic the brake pedal. Like I said, it's a check and balance. Both are good. The sympathetics have gotten this bad rap of not necessarily being good, but it's beneficial because if you are in danger, you need that God-given response to flee or to fight or to freeze so that you can most appropriately respond to the stress for survival. But that's what this is all about. This is survival. Babies are born with only about 25% of their brain, and it's mostly governed by the sympathetics. The sympathetics drive the primitive reflexes, which basically keep baby eating, safe, able to latch and cling. And then those turn into other reflexes, postural reflexes that allow us to navigate our bodies through space and gravity. But when we look at this sympathetics, the problem isn't the sympathetics itself. It's the problem that this stress that is sticky and stacks up, it shifts us into a dominance. That shift into a dominant sympathetic state where we're stuck in that stress cycle where it's just going, we call that, big fancy chiropractic word, we call that subluxation. Subluxation broken down means less than light, meaning that we are experiencing a little bit of darkness in our system so that we're not expressing our life to the fullest. We're not going to dive too deep into that, just to say that subluxation means that this gas pedal is stuck on. You can only drive so far, so long, and be safe and secure and healthy with the gas pedal stuck on. Eventually, you're either going to run out of gas or you're going to crash. It's one of those two things is going to happen. And so with the high cortisol level is also going to lead to a more stress response. It's going to jack up our inflammation. It's going to lend toward fat storage. It's going to make us a less healthy person in general. And all of that, if we're stuck in that, it's going to lead to another S. If you haven't caught the alliteration, sorry, I'm not sorry. Really, that's just how we roll around here. But that is going to suppress our regulation. When our regulation is suppressed, it leads to susceptibility. And that's where disease happens, right? That's where disease process happens. That's where really disease is the absence of health, just like darkness is the absence of light. And so we have a lot of conversation happening right now in culture and society and really around the world about disease processes and how do they affect us. And here's what we know, and this is science across the board. What we know is that health is the best defense against disease. The best way to treat a disease is to be a healthy individual. People that get sick are already sick. And what I mean by that is that people that are affected by the disease process generally already have some underlying susceptibility. They have a weakened immune system or a weakened defense where their body's not able to adapt. They're already running with their stress cup or their, I would say their stress cup is already full. So they try and add one more thing to it, and there's all this spillover. There's all this spillage, and they just can't contain that much more because they've maxed out their ability to adapt and respond. And so therefore they become more susceptible. Now, what do we do about that susceptibility? How can we make that shift and change? Because we can't make a lot of the stress go away. The context that we live in, the society that we're in, your kids are being forced or you're being forced to homeschool or distance school your kids. teach them online, try and figure out that platform. Work schedules have changed, mask wearing, isolation, all of these things that a lot of it are beyond our control. So we can't necessarily change all of these stressors, but we can change our responses. We can actually take initiative. We can look at this as an opportunity to say, well, I'm at home more, so I can exercise a little bit more. I have a little bit more freedom in my schedule. I can still get outside. I can't go, shopping or do those types of things, or maybe go to the movies or some of those other leisurely things that we would like to do just for entertainment, but I can go hit the trail and go for a hike or a walk. You can also take time to hone in what you eat and how you really change your diet, or just make better choices with your diet. You can limit technology, and you can choose to think differently. You can choose to say, hey, maybe this is something that is actually beneficial. I know that sounds crazy. I know you're probably like throwing darts at me with your eyes right now, but what if this is happening because we as a society just need to slow down? Like, what if that was our mindset, that we looked and said, maybe it's beneficial that we can just take a step back a little bit and hit the reset button. But there's another thing that's really, really beneficial that I want to speak about specifically. When it comes to this subluxation, the only thing that's going to get rid of subluxation is a chiropractic adjustment. This stress response staying stuck on oftentimes is tension that's built up in the spine, which is causing tension and creating tension to be built up in the nervous system, which is causing this cycle to continue, right? Because your body can regulate a lot of this stuff, but if that tension is accumulated within your spine and your nervous system, because if we don't move well, or when we don't move well, that sends a signal to our brain that something is dysfunctional or not happening the way that it should. That stresses our brain out, and our brain therefore responds with that sympathetic dominance. So when we look at this gas versus brake, the best thing to tap the brake pedal is movement, specifically a chiropractic adjustment, because that engages the parasympathetic nervous system, that division of the autonomic nervous system, the brake pedal, the calming mechanism. Movement releases the feel-good hormones, the dopamines, and actually can shift you from chaos to calm, meaning it can actually drive you from this state of tension and chaos into the state of calm. The number one side effect we see in the office, especially in kids, is that after they get adjusted, they poop better than they sleep. Why do we see that? It's not because we're doing an adjustment or that chiropractic specifically creates sleep patterns or poop. It's because it engages the parasympathetic. So what's the purpose of the parasympathetics? Rest and digest. Rest and digest. That's neuroanatomy. That's neuroscience. That's not chiropractic talk. The parasympathetic division, if you look at any neuroscience textbook, it's going to say the main descriptor for it is going to be rest and digest. Well, if you can engage that mechanism of rest and digest, it also can allow you to shift away from the stress response and that cycle of just being anxious and on edge constantly, and put you in a more relaxed state. How does that work? Well, dopamine is released, which is our happy feel-good hormone. Our brain craves that. It also will release serotonin. Serotonin will then activate melatonin. Melatonin will then allow us to sleep. And then all these other things like GI detox will happen, meaning as our peristalsis happens, our gut starts to move and motility happens, well then bowel movements start to happen a little bit easier and a little bit better. Some of that anxiousness or that butterflies in your stomach will start to subside. Things will calm down, and all of this will help with regulation. We need both. There's not a bad guy here. We're not looking and going, well, the sympathetics are the bad guy or the villain, and parasympathetics are the hero, or we're not even saying chiropractic is the hero. What we're saying is all of these things are necessary for health, but they need to be happening in the right order at the right time, the way that God created and designed them to. And the problem is we tend to, through these 4 T's, we to ourselves oftentimes get stuck in one of these stress patterns, which then causes this whole cascade. And tension on the spine is probably the main thing that causes, which we call subluxation, is probably one of the main thing that causes that sympathetic dominance. We have specific tests in our office. We use a technology called heart rate variability. We use a lot of different technologies, but heart rate variability specifically can test and measure this. So if you or your family member or one of your kiddos might be just a little bit edgy, feeling the weight of stress, not sleeping well, having other issues of dysregulation, please reach out to us because we can test it, we can measure it, then we can come up with a specific game plan to help you get dialed in and regulating at your maximum capacity. Because when the parasympathetics are engaged, that also engages our anti-inflammatory response. That also engages our immune response. It doesn't necessarily boost, it just regulates things and helps them function at the capacity that they're supposed to. This isn't about treatment of disease. This is about optimizing health, because when you're healthy, you won't have a disease, because diseases can't live in the presence of health. Hope is straight ahead. Thanks so much.